So I went out and I started looking for management training courses. And what I found was there are plenty of out there, but they're teaching management tactics.
Okay.
Wonderful. Management tactics are wonderful. However, if your manager is a jerk, then he's going to use those management tactics to beat the employees over the head with them,
right,
rather than to inspire them and, motivate them.
Okay.
And so I built a training. The first stage is I'm going to teach everybody in the organization self-leadership.
Okay.
Right. How do I create my success in my own life?
Right.
Right. The most important person in the world is that person I'm talking to. Their world revolves around them.
Sure.
So they need to learn how to create success. And if they can create success, they're going to be way more impactful in the business, way more productive in the business.
Absolutely.
And now I've got a whole team of people that feel as though they're on the same level, rather than somebody that's telling people what to do.
Right.
Right.
Top down. Right.
Top down.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for coming to hang out with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So excited to have you on the show today. We've been spotlighting lots of different business owners, and I want to kind of go back in time. When I first got really cranking with my mortgage career is where we had an opportunity to meet. That was in like 2007. We've known each other for a while, for a minute.
Yeah.
We're definitely
my first year in San Diego.
That's right.
Starting that business.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So, you and I kind of quickly formed a friendship, and I enjoyed visiting with you, but I'd like for you to maybe give a little background on, just yourself and your company, and then we can go into some deeper topics and kind of how we've worked together in the past and what you're up to these days.
Sure. Let's see. I started, how long do we want to go back?
You said you've had your company
2007.
2007. Okay.
Yeah, I had been a business owner in the fitness industry prior to 2007, and sold my business. But I started a business, ran a business, and sold a business without knowing how to start a business, run a business, or sell a business. Okay. And so, School of Hard Knocks, I stubbed my toe a ton and learned a ton, but ran into some folks from a company called Swiss Avenue Partners, and at the time they were looking to create a license model. But what they did was they were teaching small business owners how the fundamentals of running a business, right? So most people get into small business because they know how to make something or sell something, but they have no idea how to manage people or create process or anything like that. So including myself at the time.
Me as well.
Yeah. So I saw these tools, and the first thing I thought was, where the hell were you when I was running my business? The second thing I thought was, with my coaching background, this is what I want to do. I want to teach business owners the fundamentals of running a business. So 2007, I bought a license for Swiss Avenue Partners and started Swiss Avenue Partners San Diego, which is when you and I met.
Yeah. And so I was in the mortgage business, and was scaling my team at the time. I think I was maybe 15 employees, somewhere around there, maybe a little more, 20-ish. And then you and I, started that journey. I think it was about a year or so, maybe 10 months we worked together. And you really helped me figure out process, procedures, systems, even as down to running a sales meeting. I mean, it's like, you think you know how to run a sales meeting, but you really put structure into that. And my business quadrupled, the escalation on all levels, from profitability, everything. It just catapulted. So huge thank you to you for that.
My pleasure. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. So, and I've introduced you to, I think, a lot of other business owners that have had similar success. Other companies that I know you've worked with. So let's go a little deeper into that. So when you do interact with these businesses, let's kind of walk us through that process of what that looks like.
Yeah. So I would say it kind of has transitioned over the last 15 years. In the beginning, when we were working together, it was a lot more heavy system and process, right? Defining roles and responsibilities, creating meeting structure.
Sure.
Really critical things for businesses who are already doing well, but want to get to the next level, right? So system and process help to streamline. System and process help to scale, right? How do you train the next level of employees, the things you do? And if you don't have system and process, you're sitting down and having to do it all, right? And you're wearing a ton of hats, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Not efficient.
Yeah, it's not efficient. So critically important situation, critically important structures for any business that wants to run. Over time, though, I think I realized that while system and process are critical,
Mhm.
people are also critical.
Sure.
Right. So if you're not working with the people and getting them to use the system and process isn't worth the paper they're written on. So
Right.
the transition for me, having been a coach, was,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? I can do system and process and it's really impactful.
Mhm.
I really like working with the people. I
Okay.
really like, elevating leaders, elevating managers, teaching
Mhm.
roles, teaching them how to manage roles and responsibilities, not just create roles and responsibilities. So,
Okay.
over the last 15 years, it's transitioned from me doing a lot of system and process into more leadership, et cetera, which has been incredibly impactful.
So when you're working with the people now, you're more focused on working obviously with the ownership, the leadership management level folks. Are you also interacting with the sales department or the operational people, or who do you interact with when you're doing these types of jobs or partnerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's really fascinating is there's plenty of coaching out there for executives, right?
Mhm.
Plenty of coaching out there. Well, less coaching out there for management level employees.
Mhm.
But there's very little for employees. And from my perspective, what I realized was
Mhm.
I can teach executives, empowerment and leadership and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the
Sure.
reality is then they have to go teach their staff.
Mhm.
And I figured, well, why wouldn't we just speed this up and teach everyone the same principles?
Okay.
Right.
So you'll sit down with like the whole group and you'll do okay. So that's I think the change from when I engaged with you back in whatever 2009 or whenever it was 2010 is it was one to one with me, and now you're working with larger groups within the same organization.
Yeah, I was always doing system and process with the entire organization
Okay.
because I want it to be less onerous on the business owner. You got
Sure.
plenty of things to do,
Right.
right? In a day. So if I can take your team and teach them system and process,
Love it.
wonderful.
Love
But what I realized was I need to be teaching them not only system and process, but I need to teach them leadership,
it. Right.
right? I mean, this all started because I'd say 6 years ago, I had a client that was saying, hey, we're growing, and we're elevating people into leadership roles, but
Mhm.
they don't have the leadership skills. They're getting there. They were really wonderful as project managers,
Right.
but as a project executive, they don't have the skill set, and
Okay.
it's become a disaster. So can you provide some management training? So I went out and I started looking for management training courses.
Mhm.
And what I found was there are plenty of out there, but they're teaching management tactics.
Okay.
So wonderful.
Mhm.
Management tactics are wonderful. However, if your manager is a jerk, then he's going to use those management tactics to beat the employees over the head with them
Right.
rather than to inspire them and motivate them.
Okay.
And so I decided, look, I have this huge background in transformation, in
Mhm.
psychology, in all of these things. I have a philosophy that I've found in working with people one on one that works,
Mhm.
and that is teaching them to lead self first.
Okay.
And so I built a training, and the
Okay.
training was designed around the concept that how should I expect people to manage other people if they have no concept of how to manage themselves first?
Right.
Right?
You could.
Simple,
Yeah.
obvious, seems obvious once you realize it.
Sure.
So the management training was built on this concept that the first stage is I'm going to teach everybody in the organization leading self leadership,
Okay.
right? How do I create my success in my own life?
Right.
Right. The most important person in the world is that person I'm
Mhm.
talking to because, their world revolves around them.
Sure.
So they need to learn how to create success. And if they can create success, they're going to be way more impactful in the business, way more productive in the business.
Absolutely.
And now I've got a whole team of people that feel as though they're on the same level rather than somebody that's telling people what to do.
Right.
Right.
Top down. Right.
Top down.
Okay.
Yep.
And this also correlates into their personal experiences. I mean, do you guys go deep into that as well, the personal side as well as the business side, or you pretty much stay on the business side?
Yeah, it's a really great question in the sense that wherever you go, there you are. So if I
Okay.
teach self leadership skills, the obvious impact is going to be at work and in career.
Sure.
The less obvious is, well, those are the same skills: communicating with other human beings, being accountable, taking responsibility for your life.
Mhm.
Those are all the same skills that impact your relationships. They're
Sure.
all the same skills that impact your health.
Right.
Right. If you're not accountable to your workout routine, you're never going to get fit or
Right.
feel healthy or whatever. Right.
Absolutely.
So the skill sets apply everywhere.
Okay.
What I realized, though, is different than being a psychologist when we're talking about daddy issues or mommy issues.
Mhm.
We get to talk about career issues,
Right.
which are way less threatening. Right. So I can create change in this human being
Mhm.
around a career context, and then it just bleeds into the rest of their lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How many, let's talk about the size of the companies. You work with all different medium-sized companies, small business owners. Like, what's your target demographic of businesses you like to work with?
Yeah, I think over the years that's probably changed as well.
Okay.
In the beginning, it was more, let's call it 10 to 100 employees.
Okay.
Now, I mean, you know me, I love standing in front of people. So
Yeah.
I'll sit in front of 500 people
Sure.
if they'll have me.
Okay.
But right now, my main clients, the clients I've had for years, the clients that I work with consistently, the referrals that I get are generally that I'd say 30 to 75 employee companies.
Okay. Okay. Any nuggets like you want to share, like on, on any part of your coaching process that someone maybe listening right now might be able to take away from this conversation, like a highlight or a strategy or anything like comes to mind? I want to put you on the spot, but is there something that would be beneficial to maybe share?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe if we split that into two, right? Here's my
Okay.
message for business owners,
Okay.
and that is, there is this doing this for the last 6 years, this realization that we're all really in the same boat. You know, if I sit in front of a group of people and I say, "Hey, raise your hand if you would agree to this statement: life is tough." And that it's coming at you really fast
Yeah.
all the time.
Right.
And you find yourself simply reacting most of the time.
Okay.
The majority of people are going to raise their hands, right? And
Sure.
so number one is that realization that we're all in the same boat, really just trying to survive, right? And in that realization, then it is, how much more effective could we be as a team, right? If life is so fast and so, almost overwhelming most of the time,
Mhm.
wouldn't you want to create an environment where people show up and they're like, oh man, I got to escape my family life, or I got to escape my, my friendships. I
Right.
got to get to work.
Right.
Right. Like I really want to get to work so
Right.
I can feel supported and loved and,
Right.
people surrounded by people that have my back.
Okay.
So for me, it's like looking at the success of companies where the owners and the managers and the employees are all pulling together.
Mhm.
And it's not just companies, but you look at the most successful football teams or soccer teams. For the soccer fans out there watching what Arsenal has done over the last 2 years with Mikel Arteta. And I mean, he is a motivating guy. He is a team guy. We do this together.
Right.
In the first season, they struggled in the beginning and then just came on like gangbusters at the end. And one of the interesting things was they had a superstar player that didn't fit with the culture.
Gone.
So they had to get rid of him, right?
Yeah.
As a result, Arsenal is 8 points up, on the table right now over everybody else. This season, they've been almost unbeatable.
Unbelievable.
So it's like the concept is, hey, yeah, you have a business and yeah, you want to be profitable, et cetera, et cetera. But the investment in the people and investment in that team can have far-reaching impact in sustainability, profitability, job satisfaction, retention, all that stuff, right? So I think that's the first one. It's look at this group of people as a team, as high-performing individuals, and then build that team, right? That concept, that culture. I think as individuals, it's that same realization that life is tough, right? And oftentimes in conflict, in business, we realize, we take things personally, right?
Sure.
So I had a conversation with somebody yesterday or 2 days ago, coaching conversation, really incredibly intelligent human being, highly capable, works her ass off.
Okay.
And, has been in this business for a while, right? Conflict with another employee who is also incredibly capable, highly intelligent, really productive. Conflict. And my whole point with her was, when there's conflict and she's feeling that conflict, or this other person is losing their minds to you, it has nothing to do with you.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Because life is hard.
Right.
We're all just struggling. And oftentimes we're reacting, we're feeling overwhelmed. And then when something happens, we get triggered. And then the emotions get higher and they get, we go crazy, and then we react and we lash out, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what creates conflict. And I think the takeaway is, hey, remember, life is hard. We're all just trying to get by. When somebody's, in conflict with you, it has nothing to do with you. They're just struggling. Right.
Yeah.
So in that, then I can ground myself in, oh, they're losing their mind. That has nothing to do with me, but I could show up. I could help them.
Sure.
Hey, what's going on? How can I help? Right. Let's put aside this issue. I notice something's going on. How can I help? Right.
Love that.
So that whole level of compassion and understanding and awareness and self-leadership really boils down to that. Hey, I got my shit. You got your shit.
Yeah.
Whatever you got going on has nothing to do with me.
Right.
Go ahead. Lose your mind. I can handle it. Right.
Lose your mind.
Right.
Oh man. Well, these all sound like phenomenal life skills. We kind of touched on that you don't just, put this little, everything that you work with these folks with to help them in their business context. It's also on the personal side. Let's talk about like family for a second. Cause I think, a lot of people obviously have kids. I know you've got a couple boys, let's talk a little bit about the family element and how you can maybe put some of this to work in the personal, in the home.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Life is hard.
Right.
You're out working, life's coming at you 1,000 miles an hour.
Right.
And then you go home and you're exhausted. And then your kids want your attention. You're like, daddy, 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 daddy. Like this morning, waking up, dad, 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 dad. Like, holy cow. Already? It started?
It's 6 a.m.
Yeah, it's 6 a.m. But the conversation is, like, we're all just kind of whirling around in this universe, and then we come together, family. It's just recognizing the same thing, is that life is tough. Kids are trying to learn. They want your attention. There's no limit to the amount of attention they want from you.
Sure.
Like, they'll take it all.
Yep.
And then some.
Yep.
So it's being able to be grounded in myself, take care of myself first, so that I can show up for my kids, rather than like give to my kids. So there's nothing left of me. And then there's nothing left for anyone.
Sure.
So really, I think it's putting self first again, leading self first, putting self first, so that they're, it's like
you're in a healthy place and you're balanced. And
yeah, I mean, it's that whole conversation. It really is. And I use this all the time. People are probably sick of hearing it, but when you get on an airplane, even though most of us don't listen to the
little intro,
the intro.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've heard it 1,000 times. Yeah, how to put on a seatbelt.
But it's like mask first, then your kids.
Sure.
But that metaphor for life is so critical.
Yeah.
Because we give to work, we give to our partners, we give to our kids, we give and take very little for ourselves. And then there's nothing left, right?
Right.
I think that's part of it. Just, in that knowing who we are, what we stand for, what we're playing for, what's important to us. And I think the fascinating thing that led me to is the recognition that, this conversation of identity, we identify as our stresses, our emotions. I'm depressed. I'm angry. I am angry. I am frustrated. I am overwhelmed. It's an identity conversation.
Right.
Right. Identity means that's just who I am. That doesn't change.
Right.
So if I start saying I am overwhelmed, that means I am going to be consistently overwhelmed for the rest of my life.
Totally.
Or I am depressed. Well, that's a state of being. That's just who I am. I'm depressed.
Right.
That's not going to change. Even those moments where I feel good,
right,
I'm coming back to depression. Right.
Yeah.
So then that leads to this conversation about, I see human beings walking around, and not just here in my town or in my family, but in the world, in this massive identity crisis. Right.
Okay.
Like, if I don't know who I am, then I'm pulled in all these different directions, right?
Sure.
Social media, right?
Yeah.
Social media says I'm living my best life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Put up the wall, or put up the front.
Right.
Like, everything's perfect.
Yeah. Like,
it drives me nuts.
Man, my life would be so much better if I was doing yoga in Bali.
Right. Right.
Totally. So my life must suck because
awesome.
I'm not doing yoga in Bali. I'm grinding.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this conversation of identity is, well, no, that's what we do, but who am I? right? I am strong. I am capable. I'm compassionate, right? And what do I stand for? My commitment is to make a difference for people. That's my purpose. And that doesn't change. That doesn't change by what I do. Yeah, I get to do that at work. It's awesome. I have this incredible job where I get to do that.
Phenomenal. The amount of people you get to positively impact.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing that you do.
But I got to take that to my family. I got to make a difference for my kids. I got to make a difference for my wife. I got to make a difference on this podcast.
There you go.
Show it my friends, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
let's wrap. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No,
I said, let's wrap up with that cool story I think you shared about how you put some of this to work with your son. And I think he was going to school. You mind sharing that story? I think that's a pretty powerful story that you have.
Yeah. Sure. Happy to share. Because I share it all the time now.
Okay. Well, it's a cool
you never
story.
know what's going to work.
Yeah.
So Jake at the time was 6 in kindergarten.
Okay.
And Jake is the sweetest. I mean, great athlete, smart kid, very sweet, always teacher's pet. Through preschool into the first half of kindergarten, second half of kindergarten. I show up to pick him up one day. I pick the boys up most days. And teacher said, we had an incident today. We've had incidents before. No big deal. It's like, no problem. I'll talk to him. Right. Hey, bud, you can't behave that way on the playground, right? You're the bigger kid. You need to restrain yourself, keep your hands to yourself, that kind of thing. Right.
Sure.
He was getting involved with some other friends and they were getting rough. That was the deal. Okay, Dad. Cool. Next day, end of the day, pick him up. Teacher said we had an incident. I'm like, ooh, this is 2 in a row. Hey, bud, you can't do that.
Right.
We had this conversation yesterday, remember?
Right.
You just can't do that. And he goes, okay, Dad, I hear you. Yeah. Next day, pick him up. We had another incident and now it's bleeding over into the classroom. He's having a hard time sitting still. Okay. And I'm going, what? Like my temperature is rising. Hey, dude, we had this conversation yesterday. What is going on? Right.
Clearly,
like, you can't do this. You can't do this at school. This is not school behavior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Dad. Yeah, I know. I get it. Next day, we had an incident and I'm going, what is going on here? And so my heat is rising and I'm certain that Jake can tell I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting angry. And I get to a point where I'm like, wait a minute, I got to stop. First of all, whatever I'm doing is not working. Number 2, I'm a coach and I am not treating him this way. I'm trying to bully him into behaving better. Well, that works.
Be a good kid. Not working.
Right. Which probably leads to aggression on the playground.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is not working. I said, okay, bud, we're going to try something different. Who are you? And he said, I'm Jake. I said, well, that's a good answer. Yeah. I said, but that's the name that Mom and Dad gave you and the one you've taken on, but that's not who you are. I said, so who are you? He said, I don't know. That's a great answer. Perfect. I said, well, let me tell you who I know you as. I know you as kind and generous, helpful, thoughtful. And he's like, and a good friend. I said, yeah, and a good friend. And I said, so in the morning when I drop you off, we're going to have this conversation, mind who you are. And at the end of the day, we're going to check in and see if that's who you were through the day.
Love it.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
6. So I drop him off and said, who are you? And he said, I'm Jake. I'm like, come on, buddy. We did this yesterday. I said, no, you're kind, generous, thoughtful, helpful. And he said, and a good friend. I said, perfect. So are you going to be that today? He said, yeah. So we go, I pick him up at the end of the day. And she said, we had another incident. Like, all right, well, Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's see what happens. So I said, hey, bud, so who are you? He said, I don't know. I said, kind, generous, thoughtful, helpful. And he said, a good friend. I said, were you that today? And he said, no, not really. I said, okay, good. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Right.
We do it again tomorrow. Who are you? He said, I'm kind, I'm thoughtful, and a good friend. And I said, and you're generous and helpful. He said, yes. At the end of the day, I pick him up. Teacher goes, well, it was better.
Okay.
I said, good. All right, perfect. Jake, who were you? He said, I was generous and thoughtful, and a good friend, I said, but helpful. And he said, no, I wasn't really that helpful. I said, okay, good. Perfect. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Progress.
Do it again tomorrow. Who are you? He said, I'm kind, generous, thoughtful, and helpful, and a good friend. I said, great.
Remembered them all.
He remembered them all. And at the end of the day, I said, so, the teacher said, hey, we had a great day. Nice. And I said, buddy, who were you today? And he said, I was kind, generous, and I was helpful, and I was a good friend. I said, perfect. We're going to do that for the next couple of days and see how it goes.
Yeah.
So every morning we do it. At the end of the day, we do it. Haven't had a problem since.
That's awesome.
Anytime. And what I realized was anytime I start to notice any behavioral shift with him, I just remind him, hey, bud, who are you? He goes, right. I'm kind, generous, thoughtful, helpful, and a good friend. I said, are you being that right now? He's like, no. I said, okay. So that's behavior. No problem. I get it. But that's not who you are. He said, okay. And I started doing this with my older son.
Yeah.
No problem. And the realization is I've been doing this in business for a long time, and the impact has been tremendous. But for me, the realization is I can do this with 6-year-olds. I can do this with 14-year-old girls. I did it with 14-year-old girls.
Really?
And they were blown away. I mean, sad and also inspiring is
Sure.
when I was doing this with these 14-year-old teenagers. And by the way, there is no tougher audience than 14-year-old teenage girls, right?
Yeah.
But at the end, saddened and also motivated when I heard a number of them, because I do this identity conversation. Who are you?
Okay.
And they get to hear from their friends who their friends see them as.
Sure.
And it, like, sometimes it's tears,
Right.
sometimes it's huge smiles, right? And the takeaway was they said, we don't get to hear this ever.
Wow.
And so for me, I was like, holy cow, right? No wonder our children have this identity crisis.
Yeah.
Most of the time they're just hearing how they've screwed up or
Right.
what they need to do differently or how they've disappointed us,
Right.
rather than us constantly reminding them of how amazing they are. And that doesn't just go for kids. I mean, that's just human beings in general. Imagine the world in which we all just reminded each other, hey, that behavior doesn't work.
Right.
Remember who you are. Right. So
Awesome.
That's my takeaway.
Dude, I love it. This has been great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing your stories.
It's a
And
blast.
dude, I love it. You're
we do it again
inspiration. Let's keep doing it. Dude, right on. Well, thanks for coming in, brother.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you.
You bet.
Later.